How's the job been since the whole pandemic started? Have you do you still do everything you used to do in person over Zoom, or how does it all work?
Well, there's been a lot of changes. 2020 was probably one of the most extremely challenging years that I've experienced in executive search, because the industry just consolidated. There was a lot of cost cutting. There were, companies were going through a really tough time. And you went from that to explosive activity in sort of starting out in Q4 2020, and then starting from May, just incredible market. But all turned upside down. It's definitely, we're operating differently. There's a pace, there's a diversity element. There's just a lot of things happening that we never did before or considered before.
Well, it's gotten easier and harder. We've had to change the way we look at things and the way we do things. But it's a year and a half into it now, so I think we're quite used to it. Definitely that personal touch of meeting in person and rubbing the flesh is out the door. But on the other hand, it has been a lot easier to get a hold of people, to do cross-region type of projects. More efficient in some ways, taking out the travel time. I would say maybe a little bit more transactional, because people prefer to meet for coffee, but if you call them up, it's a little bit awkward. So we do see those type of challenges. But business has been good.
And I think the other thing that we're also actually kind of seeing, because of what's happening in the last 12 to 18 months, more and more boards, are taking CEO succession and C-level succession very, very seriously. Much more so, than even before the pandemic, because I think people are actually kind of just saying, gee, you know what, we don't know what will happen. So, and you probably have seen that, kind of one or two CEO, unfortunately, actually kind of pass away, kind of during the pandemic. It really actually kind of hit the boardroom, that would better actually have that emergency, kind of plan.
No, it's scary. So what about, because I know you also do a lot of board searches too, right?
Yeah.
And how's that been? That's got to be a challenge, I would think, because trying to find people to go on boards. Mm-hmm. What's it been like with COVID? Have you been able to, one thing, do you even meet people anymore, or do you have to do everything via a screen like this?
I think globally, one of the major changes, it's not just us, but definitely for us as an industry, is our ability to actually kind of go totally, basically kind of go totally virtual. And it was very interesting last year, kind of at about this time, kind of boards and the C-level executives. A lot of them are actually kind of the older generation, right? They were never, they're actually kind of not used to interviewing people, and getting comfortable, just through Zoom. But as you actually kind of see the pandemic, kind of go by, people actually kind of have to actually kind of accept the reality. And then, as firms, we really actually kind of provide a lot of backup to actually kind of make boards, kind of feel comfortable. So now you actually kind of have situations in which, boards will, kind of do all the spec, kind of definition, kind of with us, online. They would actually kind of interview, kind of everybody, online, make the decision as a nomination committee, kind of all virtually, and basically kind of get people on board.
The positive of it is just that there's greater choice. But that's also a negative for companies, because, if the companies can look at people sitting anywhere and you're going to a virtual world, then it means that candidates have choice. So right now it's a candidate market. Candidates are considering, making decisions around, sustainability, around purpose, around values. They're looking out for what's important to them. And so you're seeing that makes it more challenging for the clients. And so finding that CEO, that board member, isn't as straightforward, because you may have competing offers, competing choices, and then the pace. The trend is that, boards have to sort of work at a much faster pace to what they're used to. Everyone's more accessible. We're doing what we're doing today. We're using Zoom. We're and it's changed just the rhythm and the cadence of how search worked and recruiting worked at the executive levels.
So as you start thinking about the next 2-3 years, you think it's you think what's happening in the U.S. may impact out here, and you'll start to see a sort of a boom of people moving back out into the region, or do you see? I mean, because living in Hong Kong like you, I see. I don't know what the stats are, but something like 50 to 100,000 expats have left the country in the last, essentially the last year. I mean, do you see that changing, or do you see? I mean, when you see searches, are they inbound or outbound? In the sense that you see more people coming this way or moving out of here?
Yeah, well, I can give you a local view just on Hong Kong, right? It's definitely gotten more difficult to attract people to come to this territory, and the reasons that we hear are usually twofold. One is the pandemic. People don't like to move in the pandemic. And of course, the political issues here have really made Hong Kong, I think, less attractive to a lot of people who might come from abroad, right? So probably is a net outflow for sure. In fact, I think the statistics kind of show that are published. But would it continue 2-3 years from now? I think that's hard to say. A lot of the things that are kind of put us at the edge right now would be gone in a couple of years, or at least the thinking might be different. So I think generally I'm still quite optimistic that Hong Kong is quite attractive to people, but it may take a few months or a couple of years to play out.
So if you're an aspiring CEO, right, and you're not a CEO now, and you're looking to get noticed by someone like yourself, where do you go looking for these talents? So for that next tier of executives that are trying to find their first CEO post, where do you go mining?
Well, how are we looking for it?
Yeah.
Well, for us, we looking at a couple of things. So we're looking at the success of an organization or an industry. So, when we're going out, we're very purposeful about, okay, let's say we've got a search in the retail industry and we want someone who's, driven a transformation of a P&L. Then we're going to look for that skill. There's a lot of interest in the first-time CEO or the first-time board member as companies are thinking of diversity and inclusion and sort of bringing younger, more talented individuals in. So there is a real opportunity, but we look at predictive performance. What has someone done in the past? And so if you want to get noticed, it's making sure that you are visible. And I would say if a headhunter calls, even if you're not interested, take their call. Make them aware that you exist. This isn't the timing, but maybe in 5 years' time, you may be looking for something. So make sure you have a updated LinkedIn profile. Make sure you have a resume or profile to share. So, and network. Be purposeful about your career. If you want to move ahead, you want to be on a board. Chart what is the board, what is the industry. And be purposeful. Meet people, reach out. Be open to those conversations. I think sometimes at the more senior level, people are a bit closed and to conversations, so they don't think about, well, I may need it in 1 or 2 years, So own that trajectory of your career.
I mean, there's so many different scenarios, right? I mean, truth be told, most people who get CEO gigs are already CEOs or very close. A lot of the CEOs are brought up from internally. In fact, the sign of a good company is where a well-planned succession process is in place. We work with a lot of clients to do these CEO successions by looking at the bench within a company before the CEO even retires or leaves, right? Working through that kind of process, working with professionals to kind of position yourself right. I think is a useful way to go. For external jumps, I mean, this is always possible, right? In that case, your reputation, your track record, those are all important to have intact. And it doesn't hurt to market yourself a little bit to be visible in the industry.